Welcome to Keep Going, a podcast about failure and success, hosted by John Biggs. Every week, we talk to an amazing person about a time they failed and what they learned. And remember, when you're going through hell, keep going.
Welcome back to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. I'm John Biggs. Today's show we have Shereen Eltobgy. She's the Chief of Belief for Kinder Workplaces, which sounds like a very, very pleasant place to be. Welcome, Shereen.
Thank you, John. I'm so happy to be here and to be on your podcast and chatting with you and your listeners.
Yeah, thank you. So tell me about Kinder Workplaces first. KINDR, right?
So Kinder Workplaces is a new program that the Kinder Foundation is offering. And the Kinder Foundation is a foundation that was started by Doug Carnine. And he has written several books in the space of using mindful kindness and happiness to create better schools and communities. And so he has published several books, and one of them is called Saint Badass. And he's kind of really known in the space. He comes from a background of education, and he's also done some impressive work in prisons. And so the next area that he decided he wanted to go into was to create programs to make the workplace environment kinder. And that's when they reached out to me based on my background with Zappos and delivering happiness and bringing the science of happiness and flourishing into workplaces for a decade and a half, almost 2 decades.
I mean, I think there's a lot to unpack in that. I mean, the idea of bringing happiness to a workplace sounds kind of like a oxymoron, but why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's funny. When we started that journey, I started that journey even before the happiness and basically working as a coach for leaders to develop human potential in the most positive way. So optimizing human potential. And through that process, I started to really lean into the areas of positive psychology, the science of happiness, the science of neuroscience, the areas of neuroscience. And it happened to coincide at the same time as a company called Zappos that was led by an amazing man, Tony Hsieh. He was the CEO of Zappos. And he had just released a book called Delivering Happiness, A Path to Profits, Passion, and Purpose. And I was working with this large company called World 50 in Atlanta. And they work with top level executives. And I was coaching their internal team and helping them develop sort of their skills and their human approach so that they could better work with their executives. And they said, hey, we need to introduce you to Tony Hsieh because a lot of what you talk about is very similar to the things in his book and what he's speaking about. And this was in 2010. And so they connected me with Tony Hsieh right at the time when his book was taking off, and he was looking for some founding team members to take the principles of using happiness as a business model to create a better culture and to shift productivity and engagement. And he was looking to create a consulting company around that ethos and a coaching and consulting company. And we connected, and the rest is history. We took the Zappos experience. We took our personal experiences as coaches and consultants. We created these models. We went around the world and applied them and really proved the case and helped switch mindsets across the globe around this idea or this possibility of happiness and flourishing being something that's actually important if a company wants to survive and compete and thrive. And that when people are happy, or employees are happy, customers are happy, and when customers are happy, the company is more successful as well.
Tell me a story about a before and after Zappos. Was there like somebody who was particularly grumpy, or like a bad section of the company? What do you think? What do you think was an example of that?
Yeah, I would say one of the things that made the Zappos experience so captivating for other companies and why they wanted to copy whatever Tony was doing, whatever Zappos was doing, is the fact that the employees did not consider themselves as just an employee. They really considered the company, their identity as human beings was very connected and wrapped up in with the company. So the before and after is really that we took from Zappos to many organizations is having people's individual values really intertwined with the company values and having people's individual sense of purpose in the world and meaning in the world intertwined with the company, to where the employee would literally feel like, I am the company. Oh yeah, anybody can have a great job or work someplace great, but there's a magic that happens when they shift into like, this is my company and I am an integral part of what makes it special.
Now, it sounds like that's a early company situation. Zappos, I forget when Zappos was founded, but it wasn't too long ago. How do you move that idea into an entrenched company, into a company that's been around for 50 years, let's say, and the potential doesn't feel like it's there. The only potential you have is like coming in for my paycheck, right?
So I think that's one of the things that I have loved about the journey that I've taken over the last 2 decades around taking the science of happiness, the science of positive psychology, running the studies, the in-depth studies that show like what happens in an organization when we start to look at the individual, and then taking that from that into kindness. Because a lot of people say like, okay, well, we get that it's important for people to be happy. We get that it's important for them to be truly engaged and passionate about the place that they're in and not just look at it as another paycheck. We understand now, after almost 2 decades, that all of the research and the science is there, that when your employees are flourishing and thriving and happy and healthier and more, more optimized and in their flow state, we know now that when people are in that state, that they're going to perform in ways that we could have never imagined. And when they do that, the company is going to succeed. But the question has always been, but how do we do that, especially when we're a big company? And so what I love about mindful kindness and what we're doing at the Kinder Foundation and what that approach is that it's an easy, low cost, high value way. But there's a few things. One is, I think, alignment on values, having a shared higher purpose, prioritizing the employee's flow state. That is making sure that they are being developed and nurtured physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So doing all of those things and recognizing that, when we reduce stress and when we address mental illness and when we create an environment where people can be, I would say, more in a balanced whole state, we're gonna do better. And mindful kindness is a way, it's a pathway. So if we now know that joy or happiness or flourishing or positivity is the key, and mindful kindness is the way.
How do you maintain that when you're failing objectively, right? How do you maintain that when your runway is running out or you're losing your CTO? How do you maintain that attitude?
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I really loved about and do love and, was drawn to mindful kindness from my own journey with myself. I've had lots of ups and downs in my own life. I've had lots of failures and successes and failures again and successes. I've had a lot of highs and lows like we all do. And I've had to find that resilience and perseverance within myself. And I find that it's similar at the team and corporate level as it is with the individual. We have to find those ways of being where we're developing our perseverance and our resilience. We're developing the energy within ourselves that allows us to find those resources within ourselves in the least costly way. And when I say costly, I don't just mean money. I mean time. I mean knowledge. I mean learning how to. Do I have to completely change? Do I have to be someone completely different? Do I have to, as an organization, completely change? What are the leverage points where we can truly make a difference with the easiest lift? And so it can be hard for people in times. I mean, I used to be in sales and technology, right? So that was the big shift I had to make in my life when I wasn't true to myself and I wasn't being authentic. And so I get that world. I think it's one of the reasons why I've been successful in bringing these principles and fundamentals into corporate organizations around the world. Is I get the competitive environment. I get how tough it is. I get what the focus is from everybody when we are failing. But if we don't find a way within ourselves as individuals to grow, to persevere, to reinvent ourselves, to elevate, or to find just some energy of emotional support within ourselves and for each other, then the company can't do that either. Mindful kindness gives simple tools and ways for people to do that. Because think about this. People may not know what they need to do to be happy. People know what they need to do to be healthy, but they don't really often want to do it because it's hard. But everybody knows what it means to be a little kinder to themselves and to others. And when we tap into something that simple, just treating each other and ourselves with a little more kindness each day, we see enormous returns on that. And so there's a massive value to kindness that we're just starting to be, I think, more aware of.
What are some, I don't know, best practices? What are some little tricks that we can do to cheer up, I suppose?
I would say it's beyond just like cheering up, right? I think when we look at our flow state, we really are looking at becoming more whole and optimizing on several cylinders. I would say that there's, looking at our personal well-being first. So that's just physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And then there's looking at the strength of our relationships. We know that when people have more meaningful relationships and connections, that they truly find resources within themselves and work, they collaborate, they create in a better way and in a different way, and they innovate in a different way. So we recommend very simple things around being kinder to ourselves. How do I reduce my judgment? How do I increase my well-being? So we have several, like a list of tools, which I'm happy to send over, that just begin that practice with oneself. If I were to just judge myself a little bit less each day in terms of kindness, speak a little more kindly to myself and the people around me, take care of my body and my emotional state a little bit more and that of the people around me, those simple things alone make a huge difference. And the thing that's beautiful about kindness is it's something that's so inherent in everyone. We just haven't thought about it. And like anything else in life, where attention goes, energy flows, we just haven't given attention to that. There's been a lot of talk about gratitude, and it's a huge part of kindness. So gratitude, of course, is going to boost kindness, but we haven't really spent time in the corporate world looking at kindness. What would it be like if we had kinder leadership or a kinder culture, or if we communicated in a kinder way? Or what about kinder sales? Can we be effective salespeople if we use kindness and respect more in the way that we sell? I think it's possible. I've seen it done.
I mean, I think I asked this question already, but how do if I'm a hard charging CEO and I got to get a chip out the door or whatever? I mean, Tony Hsieh, for example, I knew Tony. He was already a nice guy, right? He was already he was very pleasant, had a lot of ideas for the community, and that sort of thing. How do you flip that, especially right now, where tech has flipped from being against censorship, being kind of like loosey goosey about inclusion, all that other good stuff, into something that we're seeing right now, where Zuckerberg gets a broccoli haircut and turns into a monster. How do we stop that? How do we flip that?
I think there's a shift in consciousness that is already happening and is already starting. And I think that looking at that shift in consciousness as a way to share with leadership and talk with leadership around the most important asset that they have. So all companies already talk the talk, right? We know that our employees are the most important asset that we have. We need to take care of them and that sort of thing. But for many companies, and especially when they're in times of adversity, it ends up being lip service. But for those, and the cases are out there, for those CEOs that really start to recognize that there's a shift in consciousness happening across the world. So much is changing. AI is changing things. People's levels of awareness is changing things. What they want and what matters to them is changing things. So there's a shift. And if we can start to shift the bottom line, or the way that a CEO thinks of the bottom line, from just the bottom line of the company to the bottom line of the human, I think that's when we start to see an approach where the employee is truly elevated and their ability to creatively problem solve and get out there and do work that is not just more productive, but more innovative, more excited, more empowered, more like passionate about it. That's when companies succeed. It's really hard in a huge company, but we've seen organizations. I worked with an organization in the Northeast, 60,000 employees, and they're in healthcare, right? And they spent a year focusing just on connection, empathy, and resilience, and creating more self-awareness. So it's connection, awareness, resilience, and empathy. And we had them look at just those components, and they grew their customer satisfaction from the 60s up into the 90th percentile in the 90s in a very short period of time. And what made the difference is that their CEO really connected with all the employees from his heart. And he led the charge in saying, like, I care about every single employee in this person. And he would show up in a way that people felt it. You know, at the end of the day, people are motivated by their emotions. And when we feel connection and purpose together, and then we also feel cared for, their possibilities are limitless. People truly change. People say all the time, nobody changes. I find the opposite. I find everywhere I go, in every company, every country that I've worked with, and I've worked at from the smallest organizations of like, you know, small, teeny tiny startups, all the way to larger companies, like I mentioned, 1,000 employees, all the way up to the country level, working with the Prime Minister's office in the United Arab Emirates in Dubai, where they wanted to create an ethos in the country around being values-based, purpose-driven, and leading with love. So I think that it's all of us have different ways of doing it. But if we can care truly, we can make people feel an emotional connection, we get a completely different side of them. And I think what's been lost a little bit, and it comes and goes and comes and goes, and it's hard in scary times, is how do we keep our heart open? How do we connect with people from the heart? Kindness gives us a way to do that that's not too like airy-fairy and not too fluffy, that feels a little more tangible. How do we just become a little bit mindful? It's not just random acts of kindness, right? Mindful in the moment of what might my team need, my employees need, my customer need, and how do we shift our perspective around the bottom line? So there's the bottom line of the company and the profits, but there's also the bottom line of the human. We're seeing that shift happening not just in organizations. People want it in society. People want it in community. People want it in schools. People want it in prisons. There's a shift towards AI is growing up over here and it's increasing, and humanity wants to be treated in a more human way.
How long does it take for these ideas to take root everywhere?
Yeah, I love that question, and it's so often influenced by the leader and the leadership, and that's why I personally love to really focus on kinder leadership and getting leaders to see things in a different way, evolving their perspective. Because when a leader, like we saw at this company in the Northeast, when a leader is walking the talk and they are making a conscious effort to show a difference in their behaviors or to create a way of being that people are excited about and get behind and passionate, it spreads like wildfire, right? But if you don't have the leadership, or at least a couple of those key leaders that are truly walking the talk, all the effort in the world may not really work. I mean, I think what people loved about the Zappos experience is that Tony lived and breathed with his people everything that he was trying to promote for them, you know. So there's that piece. And then I think the other thing is that we are all always infecting or affecting each other, right? Everything can move rapidly these days, and it can be like a virus, or it can be like a positive effect that happens very swiftly. And I would say that in today's world, and with social media, and with having a powerful or a dynamic leader, or having a team that, you know, does something great for a customer, and then the customer comes back with this, we want more of what we received from this team. Like, as an example, from maybe a sales team did a great job and did something different. Things take off really, really fast. There's a speed a velocity of change right now that can be exhausting if it's a negative change. But there's a speed and a velocity of change that can be very uplifting if we let it, and if we are lucky to receive that.
All right, wonderful. Well, Shereen, thank you for this. This has been fascinating.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, and so I just go ahead.
I just wanted to see where people should go to get their workplaces made kinder.
I would ask them to come to bekinder.org, and kinder is spelled without an E in kinder, so it's www.bekindr.org. And certainly they can reach me directly at Shereen, Shereen, at bekindr.org. And I just wanted to say that I love what Keep Going is all about. And I think that in terms of my own perspective of what I've learned in the 5+ decades that I've been on the planet, is that there is no permanent failure. I don't believe that there's any failure that is permanent. I think failures, it's a matter of perspective, and that failures allow us to learn. And if we remove the judgment on ourselves or others, we can take all setbacks and challenges and mistakes as a part of that growth and persevere through it. Because I think what's most important is that we keep growing. The universe is made to grow. Human beings want to feel that they're learning, growing, and evolving. And if we give them that, and we give them the tools to be more whole and more joyful, more radiant, they will not just keep growing, they'll keep glowing. And when they do that, they can keep going. So I think that's like my closing remark for me, from me to you and you to me, is keep growing, keep glowing, and keep going.
I'll give it a try. I'll give it a try. This has been Keep Going. I'm John Biggs. We'll see you next week. Thank you, Shereen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. Remember, Keep Going is entirely listener supported. If you're listening to this, please head over to keepgoingpod.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast for as little as $5 a month. This is a labor of love, and every little bit helps. Thanks for listening.